Hey, this video is going to show 2 examples, also with composition of trig. There's another video that shows 3 other examples. This one's asking for cosine inverse of sine of 7 pi over 6, and they're demanding an answer for this one. Again, remember, sine inverse, tangent inverse, they follow restrictions. Got to be restricted to quadrant 1 and 4. Cosine inverse got to be restricted to quadrant 1 and 2. Okay, let's begin this question. If I look at the inner function, which is what I have to start with first, I have to find the value of sine pi over 6. It's not an inverse question. The second part, the question is inverse, but the inner function is not an inverse function, so no need to be thinking of the restrictions. We just have to find sine of 7 pi over 6. But where in the world is 7 pi over 6 angle? Let's go ahead and find that. Like in class, I told you, try not to read this as 7 pi over 6. This is actually 7 times pi over 6, which means this is 0 angle, this is the pi angle. Let's go ahead and split it in 6 parts and get to the 7th part. It's an even number split. It should be pretty easy. And that makes this 6 pi over 6, which is still pi, and it all makes sense. Each part represents a sixth. And hence this one will be 7 pi over 6. So we're in the third quadrant. That's the idea. In third quadrant, I'm going to go ahead and complete my triangle. That's a 90-degree triangle. Since each part represents pi over 6 is representing what angle? A 30-degree angle. So yay, we are in that 30, 60, 90 zone, which is cool. Hence, this must be the 30-degree angle, right? Because I know my angles now, I can very well go ahead and label the sides. The one opposite to 30 would be 1. Hypotenuse would be 2. Adjacent would be root 3. But got to be careful here. In the third quadrant, I'm going to go ahead and label both of these as negative. So what's the value of sine 7 pi over 6? Sine 7 pi over 6. That's opposite over adjacent. Opposite over hypotenuse, and negative 1 over adjacent. So that's negative half, which means this is negative half. Hence, we are now into a new question. That's the new question now. Cosine of negative half, because we found the answer to this one. Because it's an inverse question, number 1, I got to follow restrictions. And number 2, the answer will be an angle answer. We're looking for an angle answer. Cosine inverse is restricted to quadrant 1 and 2. The ratio is negative. Cosine is not negative in the first quadrant, so hence this tells me that whatever that angle is, it is in the second quadrant. Let's go ahead and label this. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so this must be adjacent, this must be hypotenuse, hence this must be root 3. Hence, this is our special right triangle, which means I can go ahead and figure out these angles. This is the side opposite to 1. The angle opposite to 1 must be the smallest angle, 30-degree angle, which means this is 30 degree. This we know is 90 to begin with, and hence this angle is a 60-degree angle. And hence the answer to this is 60 degrees. But wait a second. Is the answer really 60 degrees? Think about it for a second. The 60 is referring to, is the reference angle. The angle actually sits right here, which makes the angle 120. So the answer to this would be 120 degrees. Why 120 degrees? Remember, we're in the second quadrant, so the angle really can't be 60 degrees. 60 degrees is the reference angle, which we had learned way back when we started trigonometry. So it's 120 degree, which is equivalent to 2 pi over 3. That's the final answer. 2 pi over 3, or 120 degrees. All right, oops. One more example, like I said, we have 2 examples. Example 2. Hope I didn't lose it. No, I didn't. Sine inverse, cosine 150 degrees. So the question is sine inverse of cosine of 150 degrees. So you got to do the inner part first, but we are pretty good with finding regular values because we know our special triangles very well. 150 degree would be in the second quadrant. which makes the reference angle as a 30-degree reference angle, right? For this to be 150 degrees, which means it is a special triangle, which we are very well aware of, 30, 60, 90, which means this side must be 1, that must be 2, and that must be root 3. But be careful, we're in the second quadrant, we're on the negative side of x-axis, hence root 3 would be negative. And the question was asking for the angle. The cosine of 150 is what now? Adjacent over hypotenuse, right? We got that part, which means the new question is sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2 is the question. So to be able to determine that, we're done with the first setup here. This part has been used already. Now it turns into a separate question. So let me go ahead and find sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2. The ratio here is negative, and it's an inverse question, so we're restricted to quadrant 1 or 4. But clearly, sine is not going to be negative in the first quadrant, so we're in the fourth quadrant. And hence, that's where theta is. Go ahead and complete the triangle. Opposite over hypotenuse, which means that looks like a special right triangle to me. So when I see 2 as the hypotenuse and root 3 as one of the sides, and the third side has to be 1, this angle opposite to 1 would be 30-degree angle, which means this is a 60-degree angle. That's a 90-degree angle. And we were trying to find for what angle does sine equal negative root 3 over 2. That angle is 60 degrees, or pi over 3. The final answer to this question is pi over 3 or 60 degrees. It was an inverse question since inverse was sitting on the outside. The final answer had to be an angle answer. One more time. Why? Because sine of an angle equals a ratio. Let's say here's the ratio. So that's the angle. That's the ratio. But with inverses, if it's an inverse question, then what's sitting here is the ratio, and the answer would be an angle answer. And that's what this was. Alrighty. See you in the next